Dinosaur survival is probably my favorite genre of video games. I mean, of course it is, but still, there's a lot to love. Dinosaurs, survival? Well, I guess that part is debatable. Anyways, let's talk about map design. I'm in no way a game designer, developer, or anything of the sort, but what I am is a human being with a functional frontal cortex. And as someone with that qualification, I can assure you that dinosaur survival games are unbelievably inept at designing good maps. Whether it's Path of Titans, The Isle, or Beasts of Bermuda, which is the only one I won't discuss because it's the only game whose map is not hated by the entire community, dinosaur survival games are simply inferior when it comes to the layout, design, efficiency, sizing, and environments of their sandboxes. I'm going to discuss exactly why, and at the end, design my very own map to prove it really can't be that hard. But first, you should definitely subscribe, because at 5,000 subs, I'm going to spend 24 hours surviving in the woods in a dinosaur costume. It will be a video, so make it happen guys, I believe in you. On a more serious note, thank you for all the support recently, it means so much to me, you're all awesome. Anyways, the first game we're going to talk about is The Isle, the game that has still, after over 3 years of development, failed to move the majority of the player base over to the new version of the game, and I am confident that the map plays a huge part in this. Spiro, the first map we got, was an absolute tragedy on so many levels. It consisted of exactly one environment, with so many trees that you couldn't see 5 feet in front of you at any moment. The only populated part of the map was also the only stretch of land without any goddamn trees on it. Coincidence? Fuck no. The map was so samey and flat that it was almost impossible to navigate. There was nothing to look for or orient yourself with. It was an honest-to-God mess, and it couldn't have left us sooner. The new map is Gateway. To give the devs some credit, Gateway is not even remotely comparable to Spiro. It's beautiful, with varying biomes, elevations, and landmarks. The huge biodomes and structures are awe-inspiring, and an incredibly unique way of adding more ecosystems to the map while keeping it realistic when they eventually get around to completing that. And yet, despite all of this, Gateway is still not perfect, at least in my opinion. I know some people love it, and that's perfectly fine, but Gateway suffers from success in the sense that it is absolutely expansive. The Isle does not have nearly enough players to fill even a quarter of the island, much less the surrounding ocean and other islands they plan to populate eventually. Even if they doubled the player count tomorrow, it would be nearly impossible to find anyone that wasn't sitting in a hotspot bullying someone with a stego, or being the recipient of said bullying. And speaking of hotspots, the map is essentially brand new, and it already relies on hotspots for people to have even the slightest chance of locating one another. This problem is infuriatingly common and easy to prevent. The map is too big. End of story. It's also a little too mountainous for my taste, but it is nowhere near as problematic as Gonda, so I'm going to let this slide for now. Alright, now for why I actually made this video. Sure, everyone's maps are kinda lame, but because Thenya and V3 exist, I know Afterthought is capable of designing good maps for their game. I just think they got a little too ahead of themselves with Gateway. But Alderaan on the other hand, oh boy. Let's start with Pandora. God, that was a tragedy. Remember what I said about Spiro? Well, remove that lovely little hotspot, replace it with a massive lake, and you have Pandora. I played Path of Titans the week that it came out, and I loved everything about it except for the map. It was flat and covered with dense forest. It was impossible to know where you were going, or who or what was around you. And thanks to the massive center lake, you had to spend an extra 30 minutes going around it to meet up with your friends, or do just about anything. That lake was the only reason I played nothing but Suko when Pandora was out. I hated Suko. It was slow and boring, but it was better than walking all the way around that damn lake. But really, all of these flaws are quite similar to Spiro's. But there was one thing Spiro didn't have, and that's cliffs. I don't know what it is about Alderaan games, but I think they're allergic to efficient pathing, because my god, every single step you take is a windy uphill battle with some kind of cliff or untraversable hill. Everywhere you looked and went, there was something stopping you from walking in a straight line, and it was infuriating. I wouldn't say these things with such confidence if the map wasn't so hated that the devs had to begin working on a replacement before the game even officially released. But of course the problems were clear. The map was far too big, there were way too many trees, and for the love of God, all they really had to do was get rid of the damn cliffs. So then Gonda came out. Every single problem got worse. The map, way bigger than before. The forests, to give them some credit, are fewer and further between, but are also more densely packed and so filled with fallen logs that you have absolutely no chance of walking through them with something that can't jump 10 feet in the air. And mind you, most dinosaurs in the game can't jump whatsoever. And then you have the cliffs. Gonda is a glorified rock climbing simulator. Every single biome is at a different elevation. Every single pathway, where they exist, which is almost nowhere, is windy, thin, and steep. Why? For what reason does the map need to be so difficult to move around in? Why is there a swamp that is fully enclosed by massive walls? No one goes there for that sole reason. Why is there a sheer cliff here, when all people want to be able to do is get up and down to reach this water source? And speaking of which, why is the only fresh water source in the region on the top of a hill? Hell, people are so desperate that the main hotspot in Gonda is a crater. People would rather play in a hole in the ground than the rest of the map. Alderaan, please, this is a problem. And as for those other hotspots, there's two. And where are they? Open field number 1 and open field number 2. I think I'm sensing a theme here. Maybe someone should take notes. But don't worry, we're not done here, because we haven't mentioned the aquatics yet. If you asked me where the aquatic players do things, I'd have to tell you nowhere. Why? Because no one plays them. I wonder why. How hard would it have been to give the aquatics an open area to swim? Or a clear pathway through the center of the map? The only way to even get through is to scale multiple waterfalls, which mind you, is almost impossible to do with the most land-oriented aquatic we have in the game. The only option for legitimate aquatic animals is to swim all the way around the massive island, which can take about an hour. I'm serious. For what reason do these games need to have such punishing map designs? Why must they be so massive that finding another player is more of a spectacle than an expectation? Why are hotspots even considered an issue when the fix is so unbelievably obvious? People wouldn't need to find a place to organize and group up if the map is small enough for them to actually interact with each other regularly. And if the maps weren't so mountainous and unfriendly, people would actually enjoy exploring and traversing them. So here's my map. It has areas for aquatics to traverse the map as they see fit, with subterranean tunnels that I can't make in this model of course, but I think would be a great way to add better traffic flow without being too obstructive for the terrestrial players. The map is primarily flat and easy to move around in, while also having obvious sight lines and landmarks to assist players in knowing their location and moving around the area. There are obvious biome separations without there being unrealistic switches in climate, and there are adequate water sources so that players are not forced into certain hotspots to stay hydrated and fed. There are some forests, of course, so that certain playables can maintain their niches in those environments, but they are included in such a way that they are not intrusive and not a pain for other playables to get around or explore. I want to be very clear. I am not saying it is easy to make a map for one of these games, not in the slightest. However, the issues I have with them are on such a fundamental level that the effort and resources involved with making them are simply inconsequential to having an effectively designed map. I hope this provided some clarity on the issue, and maybe voiced some of your frustrations as well, but let me know what you think in the comments. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, have a wonderful day, bro.